He pastors the Shiloh Church in Edgemere. He pastors the Browns Chapel Church in New Jersey. He serves as presiding prelate of Praise Covenant International Fellowship. He is a dear son of the ministry of New Psalmists. He's one of our favorite people. To know this bishop is to love him. Receive now Bishop Heber Brown.
God bless you. You may be seated. Come on, put your hands together for that setup. Oh, God. What a tremendous, tremendous day this has been. I thought that somebody loved me until I realized that I was coming up after we ate lunch, then had the Logos presentation, and to just knock it off, Little Walt came and killed us. I'm going back. I'm going to still celebrate. Amen. I will still celebrate. I am honored beyond words. I want to certainly give acknowledgement to our presiding prelate, my pastor, Dr. Walter Scott Thomas Sr. Come on and thank God for him, for Lady Thomas. God bless you, and certainly to the executive committee and to all of the KACP family. I am so honored and delighted to be here. Thank you for thinking about me. I'm glad that we have sung and clapped and shouted, because I'm here to make you mad. I'm glad I'm the last one, because I'm planning to get you upset. I want to say that my assignment is to talk about reset. And I like to do it by asking you to take a mental journey with me up Route 40 near Catonsville, heading toward Ellicott City. On the right-hand side, there is a car dealership. And several years ago, when I was in the market for a new car, I stopped in at the car dealership, and there was a car there that just said, "Buy me." Have you ever gone on a car lot, and there's many cars, but there's one car that just says, "Buy me." And don't look at me in that tone of voice, because if a mule can talk, and if rocks can cry out, then a car can talk. And this car was talking because, one, the car was clean and shining, and my weakness, the car was black. I just believe every preacher at some point ought to have a black car. The car was speaking to me. The car was shining. It was black. The wheels were kicking. And then, Macklin, it had caramel interior. Come on up in here. Caramel interior, shining black with wood trim on the inside. And the car said to me, "Buy me." It didn't matter that the car was a stick shift. And I was only accustomed to driving automatic. But the salesman, being the salesperson that he was, he convinced me that you can buy this car. And he gave me a crash course on the parking lot about how to drive a stick shift. But is there anybody here know who who understands that driving on the car lot is a lot different from driving in traffic. And so he got me to put the deposit down. I signed it. It was my car. I get in the car, and I hit 40, going in the opposite direction. And you can imagine how I went back down into West Baltimore because I had to learn something that I had not learned on the parking lot. I had to learn how to negotiate my right foot with my left foot and shifting. You missed it. Here we go. Here it is again. I had to learn how to take my foot off the accelerator, put my foot down on something, and shift. Here it is again. I had to learn how to slow down so that I could put my foot down and then shift. But because the car would tell me when it was time, because for those who have driven a stick shift, you'll hear it by way of the sound. It'll grind as far as it can grind in that gear, and you've got to do something to shift. And that's where many people, many preachers, many churches are. They hear the grind, but they don't know how to negotiate the shift. So I want to deal with something a little different today. I want to talk about embracing sabbatical as a cultural shift. I want to subtitle it, Hold the Wheel. I think it's important right here to just have you repeat the word sabbatical. That's kind of a new word in our African American congregation vocabulary. It's like the people in Acts saying, I've not even heard that there was even a Holy Ghost. A lot of congregations have not even heard that there is anything like a sabbatical. So I want to talk about embracing a sabbatical as a cultural shift, and then talk about holding the wheel. I want to offer a suggested definition, a working definition for our time today, that a sabbatical is an extended and sustained time away from the demands of ministry to reset through renewal with God's self and family. It is an extended and sustained time away from the demands of ministry. So let's be clear that a sabbatical is not a vacation. Let's be clear that a sabbatical is not your weekend retreat. As important as those things are. And in fact, there are several passages in the Bible that really helps to accentuate the fact that we need to take sacred pauses in life and ministry. Need to take sacred pauses. For time's sake, I won't go through all of them, but let's go to one of my favorite ones, Psalm 23, 2, and the A portion of 3. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Well, what jumps out at me is that God has to make me do it. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in this public school system. I'm sure it still happens to some degree, even in Baltimore and beyond. But in school, they made us take a nap. No matter how we said we weren't sleepy, we would run around, but there was a certain time when everyone would have to pause, put your head on that dirty wooden desk, and take a nap. And even if you said, I'm not sleepy, they would just say, well, just stay right there in that posture for a little while. And before you knew it, you were fast asleep. So many passages that speak to this whole sense of Sabbath or the sabbatical. Certainly you know about every 7 years being a sabbatical year and what happens during the sabbatical year. Every seventh Sabbath year would be the year of Jubilee, and you understand what would happen. Various passages that speak about taking sacred pauses, and certainly there have been many voices that have spoken to how that, in fact, should play out in our lives. Here's some of the ones that I know all of us hopefully are familiar with. Richard Foster in The Celebration of Disciplines. I've got that book at New Psalmist years ago, and that book is still a classic, talking about the inward discipline, the outward discipline, the corporate discipline. There's a word and a sentence that Richard Foster causes me to yet remember, and he says that busyness is not of the devil, busyness is the devil. And you're talking about a reset. For those preachers who are here, you remember as young preachers, we just wanted to get an engagement. We wanted to go everywhere. Every time the door opened, we wanted to be there. Richard Foster says, listen, you don't need to be concerned about being busy. No, you need to be sure that you are balanced rather than being busy. Busyness is of the devil. And so he is a Quaker author, a Quaker theologian. And then, of course, we were blessed at the Miami retreat with KACP's a couple of years back with Peter Cazzaro. And he certainly, as a multiracial pastor of a congregation in Queens, New York, he really helped us to take and think in terms of having a Sabbath, whether for a day, for a week. In fact, taking many, M-I-N-I, Sabbaths along the way. And so he brings a multiracial slant to the conversation. Yes, Richard Foster from a Quaker perspective, and Peter Scazzaro as a multiracial pastor. Dr. Alicia Britt Choley, what a blessed woman she is. But as a Caucasian, she helps us also in talking about how indeed to take prayer retreats, to do that in such a way that we are not operating from a canal paradigm where whatever comes in immediately goes out, but from a reservoir paradigm where you have stored up so much that you can just stand up and from the overflow of what you have stored up become a blessing to the people of God. Look at somebody and say, get your reservoirs filled. And so as a recipient of the Lilly Foundation from 2016, I wanted to add my voice to the conversation. That Richard comes from a Quaker perspective and adds things from his slant. And certainly Peter, as well as Alicia, brings a certain flavor. But I wanted to talk as a recipient of the Lilly Foundation because when I received my acceptance letter, I discovered that there was only a few of us's who had either applied and or received a grant. And let me just share that that grant was for $50,000. $50,000 with $15,000 going to the church for anticipated decline because, you know, some folk only come to church because pastor's there, which affects your offering. $35,000 went to the recipient. In this case, it went to me to do what the application said, to do what makes your heart sing. Let me pause here and just ask you, when is the last time you did what would cause your heart to sing? As preachers and pastors, we're always concerned about somebody else's heart, but when is the last time you did what made your heart sing? And so when we received the check, the trustees wanted to know, is this replacing your salary? No. No, I'm still going to get my salary. And on top of my salary, there is $35,000 over a 3-month period for me to do what makes my heart sing. And there were only a few African American recipients. And so I had to scratch my head, Dr. Leah. Why is it that all the other denominations and all the other ethnicities are applying and receiving and resetting, and the African American brothers and sisters and congregations are not taking advantage? So that's where I want to enter into this conversation. And like I said, I'm happy this is the last session because you've already shouted. I want to know from those who are here outside of Bishop Claude and now myself, how many of you know an African American pastor who has taken a sabbatical? Would you raise your hand? Praise God. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 out of 500. That speaks to something that we've got to deal with. So I want to enter the conversation. I want to enter it considering a theological, a cultural, and congregational perspective. I want to dialogue with you briefly from a theological standpoint. And so here are some of the places that made my heart sing. Every time I look at it, I get excited because I'm able then to hang out, to do what I want to do. And if we're honest, as preachers and pastors, even if we go away for a week, by Thursday, we know Sunday's coming. So you don't even have the luxury of really being on vacation and really settling down and resetting. So the wife and I, the daughter, we just hung out. June, all of July, and most of August, we just went away, came home, washed clothes, repacked, and we went away again. And I gotta tell you, it was the best summer that I have had in our entire married life. Because now we are doing what makes our heart sing. Oh God, we went on a Royal Caribbean. We went first class. We got a suite right in the middle where we saw everything. We had an upstairs, a downstairs. We had a balcony. I mean, $35,000 can take you a long way. Yeah? I plan to spend every dollar of it. We had a great time. I went to conferences. I went out and I didn't eat tuna fish sandwiches. I ate T-bone steak. I had a ball with $35,000. And yet there was limited African-American recipients. I got to tell you, I really had to process that. So as I started talking with clergy, I began to ask them, what was some of your reluctance for even applying? And some of them would say stuff like, I can't get away yet. The timing is not right. If I get away right now, it's going to slow down the momentum of the ministry. Here's the biggest one. Here's the biggest one right here. That I'm afraid of what I'm going to come back to. That's why I can't even take vacation, much less a sabbatical. I can't take a vacation because even if I have 6 weeks of vacation, I can't be away more than 2 Sundays. Or it impacts the ministry. One of the biggest things, I can't take a sabbatical because I am afraid of what I'm coming back to. So here's the biblical context I want us to think in terms of. Exodus 32:1, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down out of the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." You mean the man who led you through the Red Sea? He's been away too long, and we don't know what has happened to him. I got to tell you, that was the biggest thing out of this preliminary survey of pastors who are reluctant to take a sabbatical. One, because they don't know what they're coming back to. The other thing is because the people don't understand the necessity of you going away. So that's why I'm happy there are clergy and laity here, so you can be the ambassadors when you go back to say, it's not just that pastor or bishop needs to go away, but there is something that needs to happen in and to us. So when I begin to talk to my congregations, I had to let them know that there were going to be some things that they would experience that they would never experience if I stayed there. That sounds like Jesus to me. I got to go away. If I don't go away, you're not going to receive and experience what is yet to come. I've got to go away. Going away is a real challenge. I had a whole list of things, but time won't allow. But one of the national pastors put on one of the social medias last week or so a list of things, and you probably can relate. Here's some of them. After preaching 26 weekends, totaling 311 times, 27 Bible studies, totaling 81 times, 27 prayer calls, 181 daily periscopes, 245 Insta stories, 31 out-of-town engagement, 13 bank board meetings, 12 full gospel councils, 12 international gospel calls, 15 strategic gospel planning meetings, presiding over a conference in Ohio. All in all, he continues just to justify taking a vacation. Why is it that the congregations are insensitive to all that the pastors and bishops and leaders have to go through in order for them to be blessed, and we have to feel like we've got to justify stepping away from the demands of ministry? Well, so during my time away, I went to Charleston, South Carolina. While in Charleston, South Carolina, I went to a plantation. It was the Boone's Hill plantation in Charleston, South Carolina. As I was walking through where the slaves would reside, it hit me that there is a connection between us and the ancient Israelites culturally. Because you can take a country person out of the country, but you'd be hard-pressed to get the country out of the country person. You can take those who have been in slavery for hundreds of years, bring them across the border, but that slave mentality is still there. I recognize that there is a connection between us as African Americans and the ancient Israelites because of our cultural experience. I walked out of those slave quarters realizing that they have and we have been socially conditioned to work hard. And taking a break is not an option. We really have to reconsider what it is that causes us to drive like we do. Before I went into ministry, I worked at Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I was working as a supervisor, the only black supervisor at the time in Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Maryland, and I had an Italian manager above me. It was through him that he began to initiate throughout the system, listen, we're not going to work harder, we're going to work smarter. And we are still trying to catch up in how do we work smarter with all of these ministries that has transformed the religious and spiritual landscape. We've got multiple locations and numerous services. The risk factors associated with heart attacks and strokes and diabetes and other illnesses and burnout are increasing. And so having a reset is not even optional. A reset is imperative, and I gotta be honest, it's not always easy. Let me let me see if I can help you understand what I'm saying. A few years back, while I was working through my doctoral at United, my mentor, Dr. Frank Thomas, he invited me and the boys to his home at the time, was outside the suburbs of Chicago. I was excited to go, grabbed the boys and said, we're going to Chicago. I'd never been to Chicago before. We packed up our stuff, and we started out on a Saturday early afternoon with no idea how long it was going to be. Didn't have GPS like we do now, and I didn't think to make reservations at hotels along the way. And so when the sun went down, I'm still driving, nowhere near Chicago. I started pulling over trying to find a hotel, but it was vacation season, and every place was booked. So I'm driving, and I'm starting to nod. The car's starting to swerve. And my son, Dr. Heber, about 18, just had his learner's permit. He says to me, Dad, I'll drive. Well, you know, that immediately woke me up for a little while. I kept pressing. I got to the next exit and said, let me see if I can find a hotel. But every hotel was filled. I got back in the car and I kept right on pressing, and I started swerving. And Dr. Heber said, Dad, I'll drive. I was so tired that I pulled over because it was a long stretch. All he had to do was just stay on this road. I said, I'm going to just rest my eyes for a little while. So Heber and I switched. He gets behind the wheel, and I said, listen, just follow the signs. Don't deviate. Stay on the road, and anything that says Chicago, head toward Chicago. I'm just going to rest my eyes for a little bit. When I woke up, we were in downtown Chicago. And all I realized was there are times when we got to pass the wheel. Because if we don't pass the wheel, we're going to hurt ourselves and everybody who's in the vehicle with us. Look at somebody and say, pass the wheel. I can tell you're tired. The car is swerving. Pass the wheel. You get ready to hurt us, so just pass the wheel. And then it's not only theological, it's not only cultural, but it's congregational. That's why I'm glad all of us are here. It's congregational. It is necessary for the pastor, leadership, and congregation to work together to ensure success. It's important. So when it came to the pastor, I had a conversation with my wife, because for me, family is important. See, I'm a preacher's kid. So I grew up watching my father, bless his memory, pastor until he died. He started preaching at the age of 17. He died at the age of 92, still pastoring. And I knew nothing of a family vacation, because the only family vacation took place wherever Dad was doing revival. And so for me, it was important that when I do what makes my heart sing, that my family is at the center of the planning. So my wife, by vocation, she is a speech pathologist. She works in the Harford County school system. I said, listen, I know you love what you do. I love what I do. She doesn't bother me with what I love, and I don't normally bother her with what she loves. But for this, I said, listen, you are going to have to stop what you love to do. I'm going to stop what I love to do so we can love to do some stuff together. Oh, somebody better hear me. And so we had a conversation, and we made some agreements because I know how members are. I said to my wife, I said, listen, I'm cutting off all communication from the church. And I need for you to shut it down as well. Because you know, if they can't get to the pastor, then what they do is go to the first lady so she can convey it. I said, no, listen, I don't want to know nothing. Shut it down. I shared it with the people as well. Listen, don't call me. I won't call you. I got to be honest. I got to be honest, Bill. The last day of, however, I was texting and emailing everybody what they needed to do while I was gone. But once gone, I was gone. And so from a pastoral standpoint, having the family engaged and involved was important. Not only with the pastor, but with the leadership. We brought in another chairman of a ministry. In fact, it was Wayland Baptist Church's chairman to come in and talk to our leadership. Because Dr. Hoffman Brown was one of the pastors in Baltimore who took a sabbatical. It wasn't through a foundation. He did it in cooperation with his church because they recognized that our pastor needs time away. So even if you get turned down from a foundation, that ought not deter you from purposing to say, listen, I need some time. When I realized that every 7 years we ought to be taking a sabbatical, cumulatively this year, I would have been pastoring 50 years. 32 years at Shiloh, 18 years simultaneously at Brown's Chapel in Newark, New Jersey. Together, that's 50 years. I realized that I have missed out on a whole lot of sabbaticals, and almost cumulatively for 50 years, I've only got 3 months to say I am stepping away from the demands of ministry. Pastor, the leadership, when I got ready to leave on the last Sunday, and some of our staff, they're here, they would testify. I called all the leaders up to the altar. I had gone to Western Auto. I purchased a steering wheel. I brought them to the altar, had prayer, and then I passed the steering wheel to the chairman and told the chairman, hold the wheel. Don't turn the wheel. Just hold the wheel so that when I come back, things will be like I left them. Just hold the wheel. Now, I got to tell you this. You got to be careful who you give the wheel to. Moses thought that Aaron could have held the wheel. But Aaron let the people cause him to go contrary to what Moses and God's intent was. You got to be careful about who you give the wheel to. And I got to be honest, my time is almost up. keep me on track, Bishop O. I got to be honest with you. There were some, when they realized that I was going away, tried to make a power play. Some of my associates thought, well, when Bishop go, I ought to be. Because he give me opportunity to preach, he give me opportunity to worship lead. When Bishop go, then I said, no. See, if you're too eager for the wheel, I said, no. Oh, there was a little kicking up the dust because some folk who thought they should hold the wheel didn't get the wheel. I said, no. The chairman of the deacons ministry, he got my spirit. And so I'm going to put the wheel. On that Sunday, I had them all lined up. All of the deacons, all the trustees, all the deaconesses. I'm giving the wheel to the chairman and hold the wheel. And I got to tell you, he held it. He held it because not only was it a conversation with myself and the family, not only a conversation with the leadership, but the congregation had to be brought along. A couple of things that I'm about through. Listen, so I had 2 big posters in the narthex because now I needed them to come to the realization why Bishop needed a sabbatical. I told them, listen, every one of you, don't duplicate the answers. Write down what you think it is that your bishop does. It filled up 1 billboard. It filled up 2 billboards and more. So now they are able to see why their pastor needs a sabbatical. And so toward that end, I had to also share with them in different meetings this one thing, and I got to be honest, it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing. I said, now, I love all of you, but if you should die before I come back, I will meet you in glory. I had to be upfront. I had to tell them. It was hard to do. It's hard to do. But I love you. But if you should die, I want you to tell your family members so nobody get all bent out of shape. If you should die before I come back, I will meet you in glory. I had a member who was in a rehab center who sent for me before I went away. She said, Bishop, I heard that if I die, I said, yes, sis, if you die, I love you, but I'll meet you in glory. Well, don't you know she held on? And y'all, she is still here. She is still here. But one of the hardest things, and unfortunately, but it was God's plan, we had 4 deaths in those 3 months. But you know what? The congregation were on board. They understood. The leadership stepped up in a way that I have never seen them step up. Every need was met, and they realized that they could do some things without Bishop being there to hold their hand through every aspect of ministry. Well, you've been kind. Let me hasten. Let me hasten toward conclusion here. This was my return, the 7:30 service. You can't see all of it. But when I cut the corner, the young people were there with signs. Welcome back, Bishop. They had pom-poms on the other side. The whole congregation was over in front of the church. Oh, I got to be honest. The closer it got to the 90 days, I felt a pull. One, I got to be honest. I enjoyed. Sister Thomas, I enjoyed being away from the church. This was the highlight for me. Out of all the places that we went, when my wife looked at me in the eyes and said, I finally have my Heber back. Because, you know, we're always competing. When she looked at me and said, not I got Bishop back, not when I had Pastor back, but when she looked at me and said, I finally have my Heber back, I'm like, I can stay here. I could stay here. So when those 90 days started winding down, I felt some kind of way. I wanted to stay, but I got to go back. But when I turned the corner, oh God, they showered me with love. And then the chairman met me at the parking lot to give me the wheel back. No golden calves made, no wild orgies going on. He gave me the wheel back. Here's some takeaways, and I'm through, Bishop O. Benefits for me. Better management of my time through the use of technology and delegation. I'm more apt now to give the wheel to trustworthy and capable people. If I'm tired, listen, you've already proven that you can do it. You did it before. You can do it again. Greater attention toward home and family, resulting, I guard this. When I came back, my work week at the office is Tuesday through Thursday. I'm not meeting on Monday, and I'm not meeting on Friday. In fact, I'm not even coming to the office, because y'all know if they see your car, just want to come in and talk. I ain't got time for that. Tuesdays and Thursdays is the way by which practically I have reset ministry. Official leadership continues to operate at a higher level of commitment in ministry. You know, before I went away, we have a system of accountability. Leaders need to give monthly reports on who they would see, sick visitation, etc. When I was away, the chairman would have all of the deacons going to everybody in the hospital. Everybody. Now, before it was just one, two by two, go here and there. No, all of us are going. Do you know the kind of impression that made on the congregation? That our leadership care that much that the whole leadership will show up, and they continue that to this day. Finally, greater sensitivity by the congregation regarding the demands of ministry upon the pastor. Well, when I came back, I had a bookmarker that said, Bishop's first sabbatical. That spoke volumes to me, because now I know that they are sensitive to the fact that if this is the first, if I'm going to be there 7 more years, there's going to be a second. And you have to intentionally plan your sacred pauses. Just some thoughts from a cultural standpoint. God bless you.